Start a Therapy Practice podcast, episode number 41. Hey there, it's Scott at startatherapypractice.com. How are you doing? So glad you joined me today. I've got a nice interview with Dr. Jared Carter, physical therapist. He's in the cash PT space. Super excited that I got to talk to him. And before we get to that interview with Dr. Jared Carter, I wanted to mention that I just made a short little video explanation, a new explanation of my progress note, my therapy progress note. And if you're in the cash therapy space, it would be a very good tool for your cash therapy business. So you can check that out at startatherapypractice.com, and there's a link to the progress note there. Also over there at startatherapypractice.com, free forms, free client tracking spreadsheet, which also would be handy for you cash therapy practitioners. And there is a list of 15 therapy consultants that you should follow. Now, Dr. Jared Carter is on this illustrious list of therapists who are in the consulting business, and he's the first therapist that I heard who had a podcast, so he's sort of an inspiration to me. Now, Jared has a few ebooks under his belt. He's got a free one over at his website called Cash-Based Physical Therapy and Medicare. In that ebook, he covers some rules about Medicare and cash-based therapy. And what he's recently done is he's expanded on his free version of that ebook and written an extensive guide to cash-based physical therapy and Medicare. So he's answering all kinds of questions. As he mentions in the podcast interview, is that ignorance of the law does not excuse you from the law. So you definitely want to know the rules when it comes to Medicare and cash-based physical therapy. Don't get in trouble. It's a small investment to buy this ebook that Dr. Jared Carter has put out, and he's trying to help you to avoid the serious fines that go along with the laws involved with Medicare. And you can find that ebook and his other ebooks over at drjaredcarter.com. And I will put links in the show notes at startatherapypractice.com/41 to all of the websites that we mentioned today in this podcast. So with that, let's get to the interview with Dr. Jared Carter. Here we go. Hey, Jared, how you doing?
Doing great, man. It's Friday evening in Austin, and the Austin City Limits Music Festival is happening just around the corner here. So
I was going to say, I know Austin is a good music town.
It is, man. And this is the first of the 2 weekends of that festival. And right now I'm looking out at my out of my office window, and they use our parking lot. They sell spots, $20 a pop. So throughout the day, the parking lot's like filling up, and they make sure our clients have spaces. But yeah, it's a fun time of the year here for sure.
Do you usually go out and partake of that?
I will go usually for like a 1 day at a time, but I've never done a full meal deal, kind of 3 day in a row deal. But this weekend I'm not going to be able to because of a ton of work I've got to do. But yeah, I've been out there. It's a really good time.
Cool. I'd like to do that sometime, but probably not anytime soon, but maybe one of these days.
Right on.
Well, before we get started here, Jared, I want you to give us an introduction as far as what you did after PT school and how you arrived at private practice. Just walk us through that experience.
Okay, cool. Well, I'll try not to go on too long with it, but I essentially, coming out of PT school, my big thing was to find a great mentor. And I knew I was coming back to Austin from PT school, which was in St. Augustine, Florida. And so I just looked for the person that seemed to have the most credentials and training in manual therapy, which was my big focus. And I found a phenomenal mentor who took me under his wing and really trained me up as well as he could. But within about a year, or a little over a year into it, I had this really unique opportunity come up where I was able to be a private physical therapist for a couple, for just a man and a woman who were traveling a lot, needed a lot of PT, and weren't getting it because they were kind of always traveling so much. So I ended up leaving that job, which was a phenomenal start to my career. And that was an insurance-based clinic, by the way. And then I went and did the private thing, and I was getting paid privately with that couple. And I did that for a little over a year. And then ended up doing a little more traveling on my own before I got back into my next job, which was at a cash-based practice, also a manual therapy focused practice, but very different in that it was cash-based from what I'd seen in, even prior to PT school and when I was in PT school, even, in the rotation, saw a lot of different insurance-based practices. And so eventually about 5 years out of school, I decided I'd always kind of had an entrepreneurial bug, even, coming up in high school and in college, and decided it was time. And then I had to make the decision if I was going to go cash pay or the traditional insurance route. And I decided to dive in and go cash pay with the business model and see how it went. And it's gone great. And that's kind of the short story of how I got here.
At the time you went cash pay, did you have a brick and mortar practice? No,
I was in another cash-based practice as an employee. And then just due to a number of factors that all kind of came together at once, I realized I had to move on. I wasn't actually sure if I was going to go into private practice or just try to find another job. And I just at that point decided I'm going to give it a shot, and I'm going to see if I can make it work in the cash-based model, because I knew that was on a day-to-day basis, and the way I was able to treat patients in that model and kind of spend the time I wanted to, that I wanted to see if I could make it work, and it ended up doing, it ended up going really well.
Well, tell us about that initial step of going out on your own. That's, I've been there. That's a scary step of,
yeah.
I mean, you're kind of stepping off into the darkness and praying everything goes well.
Yeah.
Tell us about kind of like your mindset there, and then how you got over the hurdles of not only a mindset, but over, acquiring new clients.
Right. I think mindset wise, an important thing to maybe get in the habit of for those who are thinking about doing, starting their own practice, but then find themselves maybe overanalyzing things, or just spending a ton of time analyzing, will it work, might it not work, and getting a lot of, or building a lot of fear about it, is sometimes you just got to go for the cannonball into the icy water and understand that if it doesn't work out, if you manage to start kind of in a bootstrap way, you didn't take out, $50,000 loan, $100,000 loan, something like that. But if you can start with really low overhead and you're not going into significant debt to do it, then if it doesn't work out, get another job. It's PT, OT, speech. There's tons of work for us, at least at the time of this recording. So if you can manage to not go into debt to get the ball rolling, then if it doesn't work out, you'll be all right. Think of it that way, for one. And also realize that, at least in my experience, most of the people that start their own practices, whether insurance-based or cash-based, if they're willing to work really, really hard, they realize that it went better than they thought it was, or that it moved along a little faster than they expected it to. Not in all cases, but I hear that a lot from the people that I work with and interact with online who start their own practices. So, but looking back to my personal experience on it, when I had left my former employment, and maybe 2 to 4 weeks had gone by, I already had some patients who were tracking me down via LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever. And they're like, hey, I heard you're not there, and can you see me? My knee hurts, So I already knew it was one of those things where I was already kind of seeing that there were at least a few people who I could immediately be seeing and make some money, just to float me. And at the time, I did not have much in the way of savings. Unfortunately, I wish I could say that I had been ultra responsible financially up to that point. But I had like maybe 2 or 3 months worth of expenses, of, living expenses in the bank, and that's it. So when I did decide to do it, I had to move fast and worked really hard. And like I said, once I was a month or so into it, and I was, seeing a couple, 2, 3 patients a day, that was plenty to keep me floated until I got really busy, and then I was making good money. So I don't know if I answered the whole question. That was kind of the mindset thing.
Yeah. No, that was good. And I think you're dead on as far as, you gotta go with the cannonball into the icy water. And I read something here recently that said good is good enough, just start, and then you can perfect your craft over time.
I'm not saying not to plan, I think, obviously do your due diligence and plan, but if you feel that you're actually delaying the start of the practice, due to fear, then it's time to just, go for the cannonball.
Yeah. And your point of, it's not like this is the end of the world. If you have to go get another job, there's very good jobs out there and you can go back to that. So it's not a do or die sort of situation. I think that's a real good message.
Totally.
So when you first started out and then you're seeing a couple clients, what were some marketing things that you did at that point that were good and some that you were just like, you know what, that's not working. We need to go somewhere else with this marketing?
Yeah, great question. I think early on, my biggest things that I felt were paying off nicely were just getting out and networking, whether that was, just local business owner groups. Chamber of Commerce was a good one. Happy hours, meetup groups. And for those thinking about doing this, you might even get on Meetup and go to a group that has an interest, like an athletic interest, where maybe there's some that you have yourself, not like you show up and you're like, hey there, runners. I'm a PT. I don't run, but I'm a PT and I'm starting like something that you're into, that you can kind of connect with people on. And it's like, oh, you're PT. Yeah, I just started my own practice, that kind of thing. So for me, the networking definitely helped. I would meet people at those that either needed treatment themselves or that maybe they had a similar clientele. Maybe I'd meet a Pilates instructor or a massage therapist or something like that. And you got to make sure in those situations that you really follow up with the people you meet and try to set up future meetings. And, even if you have a good impression of someone that first time, everyone's busy. People usually aren't going to go out of their way to try to send you business if you don't really have a few more than just that one touch, that first initial meeting. Try to build on that, follow up with everybody in some way and try to, really build a relationship, not just a one-time meeting. So I was really good about that, good about following up, and that paid off big time early on. Later on, I got into online marketing stuff and things like that helped a lot. But early on, it was really just about getting in front of people, and starting some relationships. And then, and I actually did not, go, to physician groups or, try to market directly to physicians. From my experience in the former cash pay, business, when we try that, we found that it just wasn't generally the best investment of time. Usually the best way to get in good with physicians, if you're a cash-based practitioner, such that they would actually send you patients, because a lot of them are quite hesitant to send patients where they can't use their insurance. The best way to do it was to really get phenomenal results and have patients telling them, how different it was than their other experiences. That's where I've actually developed physician relationships, but not by going to their office and, bringing them lunch or anything like that. And then in terms of things that didn't work, aside from, marketing directly to physicians, if I had tried that, I think I actually bought an ad in a newspaper. At one point it was like, hey, you're starting up new. Here's, for $250, you can get your little blurb in this new to the area section of the newspaper, and that did nothing. For as far as I could tell, no one came in for that. I think at one point I also, pretty early on, paid $500 or $700 to have a little kind of corner square of this big magnet that was the local basketball team's schedule, and it was a kind of an 8.5 by 11 magnet that goes on the refrigerator. And I didn't see anyone that mentioned my name from that, and so that was kind of a hefty loss. Early on, when you're just starting out and you shell out $700 and it doesn't do anything for you, that's a bummer. So those are kind of my successes and failures early on with the marketing side of things.
Well, I have similar experience of, paying people money or groups money, to be on their magnet or whatever, and getting no return off of that. So I think that's kind of, goes along with the territory of learning about private practice. That, if you want to make a donation, that's fine, but sure, you might not get any return on that investment.
Right.
So yeah, I've learned that the hard way myself. So you mentioned marketing to the doctors. Do you think that it's possible that the doctors who are, all doctors are taking insurance or Medicare, do you think they get a little resentful because here comes the cash PT and they don't have to play by the same rules as the doctor does?
No, I don't think I've never gotten that impression. And actually, we are seeing more and more physicians dabbling in the cash pay realm. I mean, some of my best referral sources are either physicians who are concierge or fee for service cash pay family doctors, or their primary practice is in something like prolotherapy or platelet-rich plasma or stem cell injections that aren't at this point in time covered by insurance. So that, obviously it's like they have the same patient population that I'm after, with my practice. So I do actually now market to that type of physician, but I haven't gotten the idea that they're resentful. Generally, when I've met physicians in any situation and I mention that I'm cash pay, they're like, "Oh, really? How do you do that?" They're quite interested and they think it's pretty cool. And a lot of them could do the same thing, since we're all seeing such a decline in reimbursements. But yeah, I haven't really gotten that sentiment so much, as far as I can, at least not in front of my face.
Maybe more curious with envy and than resentful.
Yeah,
maybe is a better way to put it. Okay, well, that makes sense. What's your wheelhouse as far as the type of client that you're seeking out and that you're treating? What are you typically treating, or what do you like to treat?
Well, typically treating really does span the ages, genders, and also body parts. I mean, whether it's turf toe or bunion, or cervicogenic headaches, or TMJ. I mean, and everything in between. I really do treat almost everything musculoskeletal from head to toe. What I find myself treating the most of would probably be, obviously low back is a big thing with most PTs. Plenty of low back and neck, and then probably close seconds would be a mix of shoulder, knee, and also I probably see a higher than average amount of ankle injuries and ankle sprains, because I have some pretty unique manual therapy techniques for those that get people better very, very quickly. So that's kind of the span of what I treat. And then what I really like to treat would be, just people who are super passionate about getting back to their activity because they're so motivated. They're going to do, generally you find in the cash pay realm, people are more motivated anyways because they're paying so much more out of pocket, to be there. So that's a really nice thing to start with. But when you have that athlete who's just really hardcore and has that competition coming up, that's exciting when you can work with them and get them competing or practicing again and really quickly. So those are my favorites, just the really highly active or even, high school or professional athletes. I know that's a pretty standard answer for a lot of PTs out there, but I do find myself kind of a little more jazzed with those patients, when they're in the clinic.
That makes sense. I mean, you want to see somebody whose motivation is there, and I imagine the motivation is pretty high in those types of clients.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I just had a patient,
go ahead.
And she's, I don't want to give away too much information, obviously, for HIPAA reasons, but she's likely qualified for the triathlon event in Rio 2016, but for the Paralympics. I won't say what her disability is, because that would be a little revealing, but she had actually a stress fracture in her foot, and she's like, "Look, I'm not going into the boot or dealing with this. I have to qualify for this." And her qualification was World Championships. So I was like, "Well, I'll get you through it as best I can." So we worked on her a couple times a week leading up to it. She got through it and she qualified, and now she's in her boot. now it's time to let it heal for a couple months. But yeah, it's like working with her to go to that, for that kind of a goal. That was just super exciting. I love that.
That is cool. Yeah. I could definitely see that. Now today, where you're at today, how are most of your clients finding you and coming to you?
Yeah. So at this point, I'm still a solo practitioner. I probably could have started adding staff a few years ago. I'm just at about 5.5 years in the practice, but I've kind of actively been staying solo to build up the online business that of with with cash pay consulting and all that. And so But now I'm really ready to make the move, and I'm actually kind of in a holding pattern because I'm waiting to see if some bigger space will open in my same building here. But at any rate, for about the last 2 or 3 years, it's been really nice because I haven't had to do any active marketing. It's been all word of mouth, as well as the things that I've already done online, which would be a combination of blogging and videos. And then also I video recorded some presentations that I did to running groups, personal training groups, and I put those up. And that has all continued over time to produce patients. And, someone searches for an ankle sprain treatment in Austin, and like my ankle sprain before and after video will come up, and they're like, oh, okay, well, looks like he can fix this fast. I'm willing to pay more out of pocket if it's going to be a faster fix. And then they give me a call. I'm guessing it's at least 60% word of mouth, but a pretty solid percentage of online, as well as, and when I say word of mouth, I'm also kind of including those referral sources that maybe aren't physicians, like personal trainers, Pilates, yoga instructors, massage therapists, acupuncturists, the affiliated fields that send me patients. I kind of consider that word of mouth as well in a way, but I guess you could separate those. But yeah, it's kind of like those types of referrals, then just word of mouth from patients, and then a lot of online generated patients. And then I definitely, maybe 5% of my patients come directly from physicians.
So when you say solo practice, I'm assuming you're saying that you don't have another therapist there, but do you have a secretary or any office helping you out with anything?
I do have a part-time off-site personal assistant, and she's just absolutely amazing. So she works on an hourly basis, and I'm not her only client. Actually, she's kind of a personal assistant for a few different number of people. And so as calls come in, we have a Google voicemail or Google voice line that it'll ring to both of our phones, and we have it set up with a recording that, calls are returned to the middle and the end of the day. And so if she can't answer the phone when it calls, then at the middle and the end of the day, she'll return calls and do scheduling. And our scheduling system is, it's called Full Slate, Full Full Slate. And it's wonderful. I tried a couple others. It's not integrated with an EMR or anything like that, but just in terms of scheduling, it's just awesome. Sends out email reminders. It's just, it works really, really well. People can book directly online, which is, once we got that online, that ability online, a lot of my new patients, when they find me online, they just book directly online. The first time I actually talk to them is when they walk in the door for their first visit. So between that online booking and her returning calls, we have a lot of the kind of administrative stuff that you would have a secretary doing covered. And then she'll come in like once every month or two to refile things, clean up, that kind of stuff. Twice a week, she comes either to my house or to the clinic and grabs the sheets that I use on the treatment table, and she washes those, brings them back. And then trying to think of what else. She also handles like my social media marketing. She schedules that stuff out. If I have a blog post I want to post, I just send it to her, and then she posts it up with the picture and all that. So over the years, we've kind of developed a number of systems where she can be essentially virtual, other than like being at the clinic to grab sheets and clean up, but she can be mostly virtual, and I just pay her for the time that she spends. So it's a great way to keep overhead low. And I think people, have this idea that you need to have someone in the front door greeting people sitting there all day, but that's a lot to pay if they're just sitting there twiddling their thumbs, if you're not hyper busy with multiple therapists, and a lot of traffic coming in and out. So it's a nice little system we got set up.
Now, how did you find that personal assistant?
Craigslist, actually. And now she was my she's my third or fourth. Yeah, fourth technically, that I went through before, I found her. And yeah, I posted on Craigslist, the job, and I like to weed people out on Craigslist by having them answer specific questions. So, like, answer these 5 questions in your reply exactly in this order. And then anyone that writes back without those questions answered, if it's just like a cover resume, they immediately get deleted because it's someone who's not willing to read and pay attention to detail and follow directions. So, but I ended up with like 5 really good candidates, and I had them meet me at a Starbucks. And I just had them scheduled out like 20 minutes apart, and she was the most impressive, and she's just been absolutely wonderful. So I think we've been working together for about 3 years now.
Cool. That's a good way to find some help.
Yeah.
I've not thought about Craigslist doing that.
Definitely.
Very cool. Now, did you use Google Voice from the beginning as far as taking calls?
No, from the very beginning, I actually just had my cell phone. I just used both. I know that's, the mix of the personal and the business, which wasn't great. But, eventually when I was like, I need to separate these two things. I'm busy now. And, then, I had Kate working with me at that point, and I was like, well, go ahead and research some options. And she was like, let's try this Google thing. It's free. And it's worked just fine. I don't know if when we expand, and have more staff, if we're going to need to do something differently, but for now it's been great.
We've used Google Voice, for our Hispanic clients because I don't speak Spanish, but I have a couple of office, help who they go to college here. And so it occurred to me, I ought to have a way for our Hispanic clients to call us. You know how Google Voice works. They just leave a message, but the message that they receive is in Spanish. So
cool.
I think it helps them to, put them at ease. Like, okay, somebody speaks Spanish here at this clinic. And then the email comes, hey, you got a voicemail, and I'll just have one of our Hispanic office workers interpret that for me. So,
cool. So you have a special number, a Google Voice number, and that's specifically for Spanish speakers.
Yes.
Okay. That's cool.
And then you can just put that out there wherever you want. And like if you had any kind of material that, from marketing material, you could have that interpreted and then put it in some Hispanic places where people speak Spanish. So that's how we've used Google Voice.
That is a great idea. Now my gears are turning. I'm thinking, well, you could get maybe, you could set up a number of different messages for different things. Like you could have a shoulder, Google voicemail. You could have a ankle, track how many people are calling. No, that's cool.
That's a good idea.
That's a great idea, Scott. Well done.
Yeah. Well, I like the shoulder one and the back one too. That's a really good idea. I hadn't thought about that.
Let's make a course out of it. There you go. Always thinking, right?
That's right. Always the entrepreneur, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Now, I want to know, what are you using for progress notes and for invoicing?
On that realm, I don't know if I should be ashamed of or happy about this, but I'm still pretty low tech on that. And again, when I expand, that's probably when I'll go ahead and switch over to an EMR that has the invoicing, and scheduling all in one. But right now, in terms of, notes, I just have a Word doc template. And, usually if it's like a progress note or discharge note, I will, dictate it into my phone, which has a free recording app, and I can email that little MP3 it creates straight to my assistant. And then she will, transcribe it into the template for the fax, right? Like set up for a progress note. I'll say, this is, when I'm recording, I'll say, this is the discharge note for patient, blah, 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 going to this doctor. Here's the fax number, or you need to look up the fax number. Okay, here's the note. And then so she just loads it all up, and then she tells me when it's ready, emails when ready, and I check it and do any editing necessary, and then I say, okay, it's ready to go. And then we have an e-fax, a HIPAA compliant e-fax that we send it out. And then in terms of just daily notes, I'm actually just pen and paper still. It's just, I only see 5 or 6 patients a day, and it's a full hour with each one. And usually the note, because you don't have to document like crazy. You document to guide your own treatment and to make sure that you're legally, covered if anything happens, but you don't have to do the extensive documentation that insurance companies and Medicare require. So most of my notes, unless it's an initial evaluation, are done before the patient leaves the room or right after they leave the room. So it's pretty low tech, but also low overhead and low stress.
Just keep it easy.
Yeah. But I do think that once I have, more staff, one thing that's not so easy, it's like if I had a good EMR that had the referral sources, fax number and everything auto loaded, and I could just quickly type, or even I have a dictations thing on my computer itself, drag and dictate. I could dictate it in there and then hit hit the fax button and then have it sent off, and I'd spend a lot less money. Well, I don't know, depending on how much the EMR is, but having Kate transcribe and then fax everything. I mean, I probably spend at least, $7.50 for each note. So that does add up for sure. So I am looking forward to kind of switching over for that reason, but it's fine for now.
Yeah. But if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
So invoicing, how do you invoice your clients?
So invoicing, well, I don't really do much in the way of invoicing because I take payment every day at the time of service. But in terms of receipts, for those that want a receipt or want to send in self-claims, again, it's a matter of the word template, which, my treatments are almost always, they're pretty much always an hour. Almost always going to be 1 Therax and 3 units of manual therapy. And so I don't have to change that much. And if I do, I change it. But generally, I just work off that one template and I just put in their name and then the ICD-9 code, and it's ready to send to them. And I actually have Kate do that as well. I send her a list of the patients that want to, have the receipts for self-claims once a week, and then she emails those out.
Okay.
Yeah.
So ICD-10 hasn't really affected you that much.
I just kind of started creating my list because I'm about to have to send her my first kind of list of patients that need receipts. And no, I don't think it's going to it's not going to affect me at all in terms of the money I make because everyone pays me at the time of service. If, I find that people are getting more denials than before, I might have to tweak and figure out what I'm doing wrong on the receipts. But as far as I know, I'm just going to be, instead of doing an ICD-9 code on the receipt they send in, I'm just going to be using an ICD-10 code now. I don't know if I'm totally wrong on that. If I am, I'll figure it out. But right now, I think I'm just going to be looking up new codes and putting those on the receipts they send in.
Makes sense. Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
I want you to tell us about why in the world you created drjaredcarter.com to help other therapists.
Right. So, it was an interesting story how I decided to kind of get into that realm. I was working on a patient, and I guess this was maybe 4.5 years ago, about a little less than a year into my own practice. I was working on her, and she was like, so I guess you're going to have to start taking insurance soon, huh? And I was like, what are you talking about? And she goes, well, I just figured if they're going to force through the Affordable Care Act, if they're going to force everyone to take or to buy insurance, that they're going to force all practitioners to take it. And I was like, holy crap, that's a good point. That's a little scary, right? And so in my research of trying to figure out if there was any validity to that idea, I found that most people were saying, that would really fly in the face of free market capitalism, and I can't imagine it going through, although, I wouldn't put it past the government at this point. But, I definitely got the answer that, nothing to worry about. But then there were people, when I framed the question, I was like, hey, I'm a cash pay practitioner. My practice is going great, less than a year into it, and I can't imagine going back. They not only said you don't have anything to worry about, they also said, well, how in the world did you do that? How are you, how does that model work? How did you get booked so quickly? And so, for a long time, again, just being kind of entrepreneurial, I'd been interested in the idea of creating information type products that helped someone in some way. Just with my hands, maybe I could help patients or people in some way. And then the light went off. Wow. I looked online and there really wasn't anyone at the time consistently talking about the model, especially to physical therapists, and how it works and guiding anyone on anything. But I knew that there was a desire and an interest in it. And so I just decided, I'm going to start blogging about this and write a book about it. After a little bit of blogging, I decided to write a book. And it's really caught on. There's apparently, it's a hugely, very quickly growing amount of people in my field, and I'm sure most other healthcare fields that are feeling the pinch, and they're starting the unsustainability of the current system and the fact that their cost of business goes up while their reimbursements go down. And, it's been a wonderful ride because, just the feedback I've gotten in terms of people starting practices in the last few years since I've been doing this. And it's like now I have my own cash-based practice. I get to spend all this time with my patients. I feel great going to the clinic every day, all that kind of stuff. It's just wonderful to hear. And it's become a nice side business. And so that's kind of how I got it and why I do it.
Well, it sounds like we're cut from the same cloth because, I think the entrepreneur bug doesn't sit still. It's got to move. And
right.
What you're doing is really, it's similar, but it's totally different than actually, manual therapy. Mm-hmm. So it allows you to teach other therapists how to do something similar. And I think in that regard, it's very rewarding in a different manner.
Absolutely. So, yeah. It's one thing to teach someone how to, treat necks better, but like to teach them how to either start a practice that's going to be sustainable or to take the practice they have and keep it from going under, having to sell to a hospital system or something, because they can't make the insurance numbers work. I feel really rewarded. It's wonderful.
Well, I remember when I was looking around, I got big into podcasts as far as listening to podcasts, and I was like, well, I ought to see if there's anything about therapy out there. And lo and behold, there's Dr. Jared Carter and his podcast. And so I started listening.
Awesome.
I've enjoyed your podcast.
I appreciate it, man. I'll tell you, the podcast has been especially fun. I do like writing a lot, but something about the podcast, because it's a better medium, obviously, for interviews, and I really enjoy interviewing people. And I think it's been nice also because for a while when it was just me kind of doing blog post after blog post on, how this model works and how I do things, I think that, the average therapist out there maybe doesn't know about many cash-based practice owners out, in their area. And so they think, oh, well, there's that one guy in Austin doing this. And now that I've had the podcast going for a little bit and so many interviews, and it's like, oh, wait, there's a lot of these of my colleagues having success in this model, not just Jared and, a few others who are really teaching about it online, like Aaron LeBauer, but, a great deal of people, and not just solo practitioners either. And that's another like myth I'm looking to dispel over the next few years is that it's the cash-based practice model doesn't just work if you want to, be a solo practitioner. It also works for very large practices too. So anyways, it's been really, really cool. And I love getting on and interviewing people as well.
Yeah. It always warms my heart to hear the cash-based practice therapists that you interview and the ones I come across also, because since I know you and I are both free market capitalists, otherwise we wouldn't be doing what we're doing. So
right.
It's always good to know that there's other people in the same boat.
Yeah, so. Absolutely.
Now I'm over here on your site at drjaredcarter.com, and above the fold is an ebook that you wrote. It's a free ebook. And it says cash-based physical therapy, Medicare. Explain what that free one is. And I know you got a new one coming out.
Yeah. So the free one, actually, I just updated recently. For years, it was kind of a 6-page, 7-page overview of how Medicare fits into the cash-based model. Or actually, I should rephrase that. It's really about any type of cash pay service with Medicare beneficiaries for any type of practice. So not specific just to those practices that are cash based like mine and have no relationship with Medicare, but also those that participate with Medicare or are what we call non-participating providers, which is not the same as mine, which has no relationship at all. But anyways, for a number of years, it was just kind of this 6-page overview. And then about a year ago, I started to really work on creating very detailed book on that topic, and it grew from 6 pages to 55 pages. And, it was like the first half of it is like just a ton of detail about the overall structure of the topic. And then the second half of the book is a big Q&A section that gets into all the most common and obscure questions that people have asked me over the years. I've saved every one of them, and they're all in the book. As applicable. I mean, some of them were kind of repetitive or totally off the mark, but in general, I mean, I wanted to create a resource that really answered 99.9% of questions out there for anyone that wants to see a Medicare patient on a cash pay basis, I should say any physical therapist that to see Medicare patients on a cash pay basis, whether it's for treatment or for non-treatment services, fitness, wellness, maintenance, whatever. And so what recently I did with that free ebook at my website, and it's pretty much there on the sidebar of every page. You can get the free version. It's the first 22 pages of the full length book. So so that too has grown, and it gives a really overview in and of itself. It'll definitely get people very knowledgeable about the core, laws and legalities of that topic.
Very good. So tell us a couple of salient points from that ebook that people wouldn't even think about asking.
Well, those who are kind of familiar and following me, I mean, this is kind of common knowledge for them, but I think, first of all, a lot of people don't even realize that there are 3 different relationships you can have. And when you say you can have with Medicare, when someone says I'm a non-participating provider, that doesn't mean that you have no relationship with Medicare. No relationship with Medicare is like me, where I'm not enrolled in any way. But then you've got participating providers and non-participating providers, and those non-participating providers are still enrolled in Medicare and they have a contracted relationship with them. But the legalities and the way you can bill and the amount you can bill and things like that change between those two. So that in and of itself, a lot of people were not aware of that. A lot of people think that, not enrolling or being a non-participating provider is also the same as what we hear when we hear the term opt out. And that's also not the case. Physical therapists are not on the list of practitioners that can actually opt out and privately contract with Medicare beneficiaries. So those are kind of like some pretty basic points, but things that I think on a broad scale, there's still a lot of people are not aware of in our fields. So I don't know if you have any specific questions beyond that. I mean, there's, in the book, there's a lot of stuff in terms of really detailed things like, okay, well, if I'm a non-participating provider, but I'm providing, a covered service, how much can I bill, and how does that amount change depending on different factors? Like you have to be compliant with EMR now or EHR and PQRS, or the amount that you can charge actually gets lower. And if you're aware of that and you're overcharging patients and you get caught doing that, then you can be subject to a lot of fines and, big problems. And, ignorance of the law is not an excuse in the eyes of CMS. So there's actually some pretty significant and serious things that people don't know. They really need to know if they're going to be seeing patients for any type of cash pay service, seeing Medicare patients for any kind of, a lot of times, a lot of people will want to, and they're smart to do this, will want to transition a Medicare patient into, say, a fitness or a maintenance type program after their plan of care is carried out. And there are a lot of legalities to that you need to make sure you understand as well. And so, if you have any specific questions, I can certainly answer those. I've got.
Oh, those are good. And like I mentioned to you earlier, since my main focus is pediatrics,
right?
It's I'm sort of suffering from I don't know what I don't know as far as the Medicaid aspect
totally.
Of it.
I hear you.
So, but it sounds like if there's fines involved, you definitely want to know the rules. And so for that reason alone, I would highly suggest people pick up your book just so they are aware of the rules. Because like you said, ignorance of the law is not an excuse. Yeah. So definitely need to be informed, and might as well be informed, from another therapist who is already doing it. So I commend you in writing the ebook. I've written an ebook, and it's not a small task to do, especially one that has that many pages in it. So it sounds like you've answered quite a few questions in that.
Yeah,
one.
man. I hear you on that. I'd done it once before with the kind of the overall cash-based model book that I came out with maybe 4 years ago. And I think that with 3 years going by, I had forgotten, like when something bad happens, you forget how bad it was until you experience it again. It's not that it was a bad experience, but it was like, I forgot how much work goes into this, even if you're not, creating something that's like, finding a printer or trying to get it published. Just the creation of it. And then, even just the technical side of getting it up on a sales page that is delivered by email and all that. it's, as you know, it's quite a thing.
Yes,
but
it
it's a
is.
good experience to go through for sure.
Yes. Now, before we go here, to get a little bit personal here, I know you were recently married, a newlywed.
Yes.
And you mentioned in one of your podcasts that you had the opportunity to do your honeymoon in Europe, in Italy.
Huh? Yeah.
Tell us just a little bit about that experience. I was living vicariously through you at that point and imagining myself in the wine country.
It was just incredible, man. And we're definitely going to go back. I mean, I'll try to keep it brief, but let's see. So we flew into Rome, but immediately we headed down to the Amalfi Coast, and the primary, probably the best known little hillside town there is called Positano, and we stayed up above Positano in this B&B and had like the most incredible view of the Mediterranean Sea, and just the relaxed culture and the friendliness of the people, the fact that you can kind of get that. In terms of food, it's amazing everywhere, but like there, we really focused on seafood, obviously. Like I had a lot of seafood risotto when I was there. And, we were able to take a trip out to the Isle of Capri. It's like a nice little day trip. And so Positano, I highly, highly recommend. It's absolutely gorgeous. Just kind of this hillside town, quintessential Italian hillside town that goes straight down into a beach and into the water. Then we went over to Florence, had kind of a 5 days in the city, which was really great. When I was growing up and then through high school, I did a lot of sculpture, and was really excited to finally see the David. And it was like, wow, kind of took my breath away. It was so phenomenal. And you can, look it up online. And actually, if you want to see the David, the sculpture of the David, and you've never really seen, don't look a whole lot online at pictures. Just wait till you round the corner as you go into where it's held, called the Accademia, I think it's called, and see him for the first time. That was quite an experience. Florence was really wonderful for a number of reasons, and we loved it there. And then we did a little over a week in the kind of in the Tuscan wine country, and we love wine. And so we had plenty of nice options there, and just driving around, through the rolling hills, and just, everything you see online and in the books, it's exactly like that. It's just so amazing, when you're driving around and you're like, is this real? Am I dreaming? And, it was just wonderful. And then we had just like kind of a day in Rome before we flew out of Rome, which was really cool as well. So it was magical, and we'll definitely be back.
Super cool. Super cool. Well, hopefully we'll have some little Dr. Jared Carters coming down the line pretty soon.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I think we're we'll purposely hold off for a while, but who knows? We'll see.
Well, the world would be better off with more Dr. Jared Carter. So
I appreciate that, Scott. That's
yeah.
Very
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, I want to wrap this up, but if somebody wants to get a hold of you, what's the best way?
Yeah. So, reaching out, if you're a social media user, Twitter is fine at Dr. Jared Carter, and it's DRJAROD, Carter. And then if you wanted to actually, go to the website, it's the same thing, drjaredcarter.com. And then if you were interested in that new Cash PT and Medicare book, you can go to cashptmedicare.com, cashptmedicare.com.
Cool. And I'll put links in the show notes to all of that for sure. And I definitely want to encourage people, especially if you're in the Medicare world and you're a physical therapist, to go and check out that book. And I appreciate you taking the time out on a Friday evening to visit with me today, Jared.
Well, I appreciate you having me on, and let me get the word out, and hopefully this isn't the last time, and we'll get you on my podcast soon as well.
I look forward to it. Very good. All right. Well, we'll talk to you later then.
Okay. Sounds good. Thanks.
All right. I enjoyed speaking to Dr. Jared Carter. I've listened to him for a long time on his podcast, and now I got the opportunity to speak to him. So super good guy. Be sure to go by his website, drjaredcarter.com, and pick up his free version of his ebook. And then you'll also want to get the full version of his cash-based physical therapy and Medicare ebook. It's a comprehensive guide that basically is going to keep you out of trouble and save you serious money in the long run. So go ahead and pick that up. Be sure to subscribe to Dr. Jared Carter's podcast also, and he interviews other therapists in the cash-based therapy world. Thanks again. You can check out all the links at startatherapypractice.com/41. And until next time, Godspeed to you and to your private practice.